welcome to the Business of Data monthly leading female executive LinkedIn Live. Each month I meet with some brilliant female executives from the data and analytics space to chat about the biggest challenges and opportunities that we face today. This is live, so please do send in your questions as and when you think of them, and of course your thoughts and comments as well are always welcome. It's lovely to see you all joining us today on a rather warm day, it has to be said. Today we're talking all about AI, and I have a fantastic panel for you today. Everyone has said they wanted to talk about this because it is such a hot topic, so let's bring everyone forward today. Welcome, ladies. Goodness me, going down through the list. We'll get you all up on stage. Hello. How are we all doing today, ladies?
Hello.
Good. Hello. Good.
Fantastic. Ready for an exciting conversation. Let's do a quick 30-second round of introductions, if you please. Sathya, start us off, please.
Hi, Sathya Bala here, Head of Data Governance at Chanel, and sitting next to my fan in a very sunny London apartment.
A fan is needed if you are in Britain today, it has to be said. Welcome, Sathya. Thank you so much for joining us. Joanne, lovely to see you.
Hello, everyone. Joanne Stonier, Chief Data Officer at MasterCard, coming to you from New York.
Thank you so much. Another New Yorker. Beza, lovely to see you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bessa Bauta. I'm the Chief Data Officer for Mercy First, and I'm coming from New York as well.
Hi, I'm Maritza Curry. I am the Head of Data at RCS Group, and I'm coming from a very, very cold, freezing Cape Town in South Africa.
We really do have quite the different temperatures going on here today. We've got you wearing a blazer then, Maritza, and myself feeling a little bit flush here. Mina, lovely to see you. How's it going?
Thanks, lovely to see you all. My name is Minna Kärä. I have recently changed jobs, so I'm now a data strategist and principal consultant at Kaito Insight, working as a data strategy consultant. Joining from Finland.
Thank you so much, Mina. And then last but certainly not least, debuting her first time joining us on the leading female executive panel is the lovely Harleen. Harleen, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Harleen Teffy. I'm the Head of Analytics at BBC Global News. Very pleased to be here on my first session.
We are certainly pleased to have you join us today. Now, as I said at the beginning here, we are live, so please get those comments, likes, reactions all into us. We would love to ask, I would love to ask rather, your questions, and I'm sure the panel would love to answer them as best as they can. Now, do make sure you connect with all of our wonderful guests here today, each of them an absolute expert within their organizations. So let's get this topic on the road, talking all about AI. So let's start out. What has been your journey so far in the world of AI? Can you talk me through some user cases that you've already achieved and that you're currently working on? Maritza, I'll come to you first for that one.
So, Catherine, most of the companies that I worked with in the last few years, regardless of the industry, so whether it was retail or banking, really had two areas that they focused on. The one was customer, so AI-driven products and services. And then the other one was operational efficiency, so automation through smart RPA. But what I am seeing at the moment is that a lot of companies are starting to also explore AI in the data governance and data management space. And I think it makes a lot of sense because we are accelerating the rollout of our data strategies. And our data world and our data environments are becoming a lot more complex than it was before. So it's a wonderful opportunity to apply AI in a different and innovative way in data management and data governance.
Absolutely love that. Like you say, perhaps even the kind of non-traditional view of AI and how it can be applied for certain. Thank you, Maritza, for kicking us on. Joanne, what's your thoughts here? What's your journey been so far in the world of AI?
Sure. For us at MasterCard, we've started using AI really in our fraud and analytics space. So if you think about what MasterCard does and all of the transaction data that we process and the need that we've had to do fraud analytics to keep all of our customers safe, AI was a natural for our fraud analytics space and for all of the work we do to detect cybercrime and to provide cybersecurity solutions. So those two areas have been the places that we've dived deepest into, although we do use AI for other areas as well, increasingly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Beza, over to you in the health industry. What are you seeing in your journey?
So for us, it's sort of tailoring services to patients, especially building applications that supports both physicians as well as clinicians. So if you think about personalized medicine or hyper-personalization, we've deployed AI applications in those areas, and now we're moving into sort of building different types of applications regarding process mining and optimizing clinical workflows.
Absolutely fantastic. Keep forgetting to unmute myself because the comment section is going wild today. Clearly AI is a hot topic. Loads of people agree. We just had a comment come in saying no party like an AI party. So clearly this is a very interesting topic to everyone. Sathya, keep us going. What are you seeing in your industries?
I think for me, I'm noticing that there's also a lot of focus in how we use it in beauty. So I think there's a lot around client experience. So maybe it's not so much about monetizing things or automating things, but it's actually that kind of client element and kind of breaking the boundaries of what you can do in a boutique or in a store, and making those experiences really count and last with customers. So yeah, I think it's a real add-on in terms of service excellence, and actually I think more and more people have to do it as a differentiator really to keep customers kind of captivated by brands.
Absolutely. Mina, what's your thoughts? And I appreciate with your job change now, you get to oversee quite a few different industries as well. So I'm keen to know how that journey's been for you personally in the different organizations that you've been part of.
Yeah, my personal experience, especially from the media and aviation industry, but also what I've seen on the retail industry, is that most of the activities are around the customer. So building models to recommend best fit offering, or building products or services, or providing content to the customer. And that helps to obviously improve the marketing activities and increase sales, and then also impact the customer experience in general. And in Finnair, in aviation, we also focused what Marisa was also mentioning, the operational efficiency. So we put a lot of effort on building a model to predict the flight delay likelihoods, and then combining that with the information about customer impact and cost impact and employee impact, and that formed kind of a comprehensive system that is now used to manage the disruption situation. So really not building just independent models, but more like a system that consists of several models complementing each other.
Fantastic. Absolutely love that. And then Harleen, round us out. What has been your personal experience and journey with AI so far?
Yeah, so at the BBC, I think for us, benchmarking content performance has been quite key. For us, we need to understand what sort of topics the users are able to digest. And I think that's where we've really crucially benefited from AI, simply because it justifies the effectiveness of our content, but also goes on to inform our business strategy so we can tailor our content going forward in a really time-sensitive manner.
Absolutely fantastic. We certainly want to be doing exactly that in all of our organizations. Being time sensitive and as real time as possible is certainly the way to go. Now, my next question, which is it comes up on everything that we host, from our regular clubhouse rooms that we host every Friday through to any discussion we seem to have on AI, which is around the ethics and the ethical considerations. Now, obviously, it is one of the elements of data analytics that many of the lay people outside of our community want to have a conversation about as well. Obviously, you see lots of popular Netflix documentaries that really get people's emotions towards this area of data analytics. So I think it's very important that obviously we have this conversation as well. So what I would like to know from each of you is, how does ethics play into your AI considerations? Has it perhaps prevented you from really going forward to it because you need to understand your ethical framework first? Or have you been able to build that framework and internal understanding of what the do's and don'ts are? Because let's be honest, outside, we're not quite sure what that means yet. Obviously, we've seen the EU regulations recently be published, and the idea of what that might look like, I think it's fair to say even they were quite vague as to how they would look. So how is that looking for each of you? And then kind of tailoring off, if you would give some flavor towards responsible AI, because that is obviously a big part of the ethics of it. So there's a lot there to unpack. So Beza, I'll come to you first there, because I know in the industry that you work within, ethics is always going to be very, very front of mind for you naturally anyway. So what's your thoughts?
So I think it's important for organizations when they deploy any sort of applications to be reflexive and learn as you're going. I think that there's, hindsight is always 20/20, that there's things that even the best laid out plans kind of fail in the process. So for us, especially, for, healthcare sector started out in radiological medicine, where you're able to use AI to detect, if a disease is present or not. Things become much more complex, especially when you're using artificial intelligence, and especially you've seen a lot of news coverage where the AI is able to pick up or diagnose a disease much earlier than the clinician or the physician. In that case, I don't want it to be a black box. So when we deploy AI application, is adjunctive to the clinical decision making. So it's not replacing the clinician, but also in tandem. So there is always the opportunity to sort of self-reflect, learn from that, and ensure that what information is there is correct, and obviously doesn't trump the best clinical or medical decision making. If you couple it in that way, it makes things much easier not to fall in the pit of just deploying an application without the guardrails. And I think sort of having the guardrails a priori before you deploy it, I think is really critical for the success of any application down the line.
I think that's going to be a strong theme throughout the panel, I predict here, Beza, because I think that's something we can all agree with. Mina, what's your thoughts here? How does ethics play into your AI considerations?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite topics, and lately I was also working around the AI ethics quite a lot at Finnair. So I would say it's very natural that when the models provide recommendations or more automated decision making that impacts humans, it's understandable that it raises concerns, and that's why the ethic plays a great role there. So what we did at Finnair, we started from defining the ethical principles for AI models, and they were not that far from general ethical principles, but they were like explained from what it means from the AI perspective. And for us, first of all, it meant that all the AI models need to be understandable and transparent. Everybody needs to understand what data is used and what algorithms are used to provide that insight, to be able to understand why certain decisions are made that then impact the user, and then being able to also document those, and making sure that everybody who uses those recommendations in their daily work, when they make the decisions, they also need to be able to explain why this decision is now made. And then the most important thing in the long run also, that it's about continuously monitoring and taking care of the model and the input data. So making sure that the model is developed and maintained, and it's not getting corrupted or not starting to use wrong type of data and then making wrong decisions. So really understanding and being on top of how the model works and what data is used.
I'm going to ask a quick follow-up question, Mina, because it's quite clear to me from the comment section and the fact that there was a flurry of likes. You've got a bit of a fan group going on here today. You mentioned about the models being continuously monitored post-production, kind of they're in production. Now, who do you think should be responsible for that within an organization? Because there's kind of an ongoing debate as to who that belongs to, because there's kind of a thing around, is that the best use of a data scientist? Do you need a certain role in charge of that? What's your thoughts, just quickly?
Well, I would say obviously the data scientist usually is the right person to know if the model is getting to the right or to the wrong direction. But I don't think it's just a single role. I would say it's a combination of roles. Somebody who understands the data science side of the algorithms and models, then somebody who understands the input data and the possible changes in that, and then somebody who understands the business context. And I would say it's a teamwork.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Joanne, how about yourself when it comes to that ethics and AI consideration? How are you working with that consistently? Because it is something that evolves, right? It's not a static process of this is right and wrong. Things are going to throw up and change, especially with the case study you were mentioning earlier about fraud. What's your experience?
So I'm going to echo probably a lot of what Mina said. This is an area, number one, that's near and dear to my heart, and a lot of work that we're doing at MasterCard. I would agree that I think everyone, as Mina said, we started with principles and then we went to a governance process, and the governance process, as Mina just ended on, is really a team effort. There's data designers and data quality experts to really look at what is the purpose of the AI, and we try to look at the human-centered impacts of what we're trying to achieve, because once we understand that, we try to measure that on a scale of what is the impact to the individuals or the group of individuals, right? So if we get the fraud algorithms right, that's terrific. But if we get them wrong, what will the impact be to the group of individuals that we get it wrong, right? And so measuring what you're trying to measure, it also then helps you understand how do you look at the data quality issues and the potential bias in the data, right? So all of those practices, as you look at the different data sets that you're going to feed into your AI, become really important. And so we talk a lot about bias, and there's been a lot written about different types of bias, but having people who understand, when we talk about our data quality designers, to understand the flat sides of the different types of data that you're going to feed into the algorithmic process. Same thing is true for the data scientists who are crafting the AI and the algorithmic questions to make sure there's no inherent bias in the actual algorithmic questions and queries, because you can also structure things in a way that could have inherent bias in and of itself. And then observational AI, I think Mina was hinting at that, using observational AI to make sure that you're monitoring. And again, that's a team sport of understanding what's really going on. Is it legitimate output as you're doing proof of concept? Or is there some problem either in the algorithmic process, or is it really a problem in the data, or both, right? So trying to measure that before you release it into the wild and into production, right? All of those things I think are really important as you begin to really get into the use cases. And for us, it's very specific. It's a very different process for a fraud use case versus an identity use case versus a cyber use case. And so we're getting more and more specific as our teams apply AI into different business cases. And we're finding that it really does, we're all learning a lot. The teams are learning a lot together. But I think that is what it requires to do AI responsibly.
Fantastic. I mean, just the sheer amount of work in that is just incredible.
Yeah, it is not for the faint of heart, for sure.
Yeah, that is your call to action today, everyone. It's not for the faint of heart. You should get that on a t-shirt, I feel. So when you're sat in boardroom meetings and everyone's suggesting,
though, I don't want to scare people. It is fun. It is again, it's a team sport. It's a lot of fun, right? You do learn a lot.
Absolutely, and that is something that's been mentioned in the comments. Actually, it's all about the teamwork. So certainly rings true to the audience. Thank you, Joanne. Now, Sophia, I'm keen to come to you because obviously, as well as your data role within Chanel, obviously you are the founder, in fact, of My Skin, My Story, and your work within diversity and inclusion, I feel really, really benefits this conversation around ethics, considering the conversation around bias. I wonder if you could add some thoughts to that.
Yes, I'll try to give you a few key ones because you won't be surprised. I have a lot of thoughts. So I think there's two things, with my day job hat, I think data governance can play a really key role in terms of connecting the dots between AI goals and data ethics and making sure you have kind of a posture around that. What being responsible AI to me should be the only kind of AI, and it should be around whatever we're doing. Is it in line with the values of our organization? Is it in line with data ethics? If we don't know if we're being too obtrusive or we're not sure we're doing the right thing, do we know who owns that data, who can give a view on that? So I think there's a lot in terms of being partners in crime with your data governance folks. And if there are data governance people here partner with those AI teams, because I think that's super important to anchor whatever you're doing. And then I think in terms of data ethics more broadly, I see it through various pillars, but I think you mentioned bias, and I think representation are two elements of where, through my diversity and inclusion work at Chanel, but also outside, with My Skin, My Story. Thank you for that plug. It's a community for women of color. It's about saying, right, we should assume that bias exists wherever we are using historic data sets, right? As a perfect example. So unless you are consciously creating interventions to ensure that your data and your algorithms are fair, we should assume bias is built in until you build it out. And it's not just about having the checks and the governance. If we have diverse teams that represent our world and our customers, you don't just rely on process, you improve that governance, because you've got a collective think tank of actually what are the things we need to worry about and make sure we're not damaging experience because of things that are being excluded, people or communities that are underrepresented. So I think it's really complex, but you need to have balanced people looking at it. That's diverse teams. You need to have the processes so that we're checking what we're doing. And also, I love the point someone mentioned where even if we get it wrong, fix it, improve once it's live. Treat it like a bug in a system. Yeah, we've seen the terrible news articles when things happen in terms of racial discrimination, gender, whatever, that's impacted these AI products that should be super exciting. So actually, let's not be afraid to create teams that can speak up if they see something wrong and don't think they're going to be penalized because they've done something wrong. It's better to make that output fair and balanced. It's not about consequence of personally getting it wrong.
Absolutely love that, Satya. Everyone nodding there in agreement, and I saw a flurry of reactions there in agreement as well. And I think it's really interesting how you word the assumption that there's going to be bias, because I must admit I've heard it framed before that there could be bias, but actually I quite like the idea that there is going to be bias unless you are controlling for it. And I think that's a very healthy way of looking at our data and then controlling for it, as you say, when you're putting it into models for the future. Harleen, I'm keen to come to you on this. Ethics is such a big area, but for you, what are kind of the top things to mind?
So I think for us, it's just important to ensure transparency in the data that we're collecting and how it's monitored and manipulated in the model. We need to be able to explain and justify our data and try to eliminate that bias as much as we possibly can.
Short and sweet, absolutely love it. I had to run from my mute button then. Maritza, round us off. Ethics. Oh my goodness, look at the time. We've only got 5 minutes to go, so we're going to have to round it off really quickly. Maritza, thoughts?
So I can't add much more to what the rest of the panel have touched on, because honestly, their answers have been brilliant, and they've really covered all of the big sort of topics around data ethics. But I do want to add one more perspective, and that is that responsible AI actually goes beyond data ethics. It also speaks to business ethics. And as data leaders, we should be the voice of our customers and our employees. So, we have a deep understanding of what the human impact of data and analytics can be. So we should challenge decisions around things like, for example, automation of manual processes. So we should challenge the executive. Do you have a change management process or program in mind to either upskill people or reskill people who will be impacted by this automation? So we should always be that voice, and we should not just be data leaders, but also ethical thought leaders in our organizations.
Maritza, if that's ever going to be a blooming great soundbite, I know the editors watching this are going to pick that one out for a write-up for certain. I love that. Ethical thought leaders. That's so fantastic. Now, we are rapidly running out of time. We only have 3 minutes left. So in about 20 seconds, if you could all sum up what you think the future of AI is going to be, which is an incredibly big thing to sum up in about 20 seconds. For your organization, what do you think that future is going to look like? Joanne, I'll come to you first.
Expanding, I guess you've given me very few minutes, expanding in a responsible way. But I do think that we understand that it's a tool that can be deployed well. And then I also think that we will be trying to work more with vendors who also to try to make sure that we understand how they're deploying and creating responsible AI tools. So look for more from that from us as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. Sathya, for yourself, what do you see in the future?
I think it's simple. I think it unlocks possibilities when done well. And it actually brings creativity into business. And I think the power of creativity through AI is something that in the fashion world, beauty world is super exciting.
Super exciting. Very, very much so. Beza, what about yourself, the future?
So for us, I think we're in the path of what, everyone is, new buzzword as far as hyper-personalization. I think for us is having many more personalized products tailored to the individual very differently, that takes into account multiple social determinants. I think that's where we're headed, and that's where we're seeing a greater acceleration as far as products and services in the AI field.
Fantastic. Maritza, the future?
Definitely customer. So focus on customer experience and innovative products and services driven by AI.
Fantastic. Mina?
Yeah, I also believe it will be expanding both on the customer experience as well as the operational efficiency side. And I think gradually the AI tools and systems will become more and more like everyday tools for bigger part of the organization, and they start to understand better, like I said, they are tools and they are not something hype or nor are they something scary, but really just tools to be used.
Absolutely. And then Harleen, last but not least, on your first time joining us on our monthly panel, what's your thoughts?
So our approach is currently a partial AI and partial human element to most of our processes. And I think that to continue that going, but also have a clear focus on the end user in mind and really make sure that the data is trustworthy and that we can really trust the source of all the data that goes into our AI model.
Absolutely wonderful. There we go. Half an hour done and dusted. It certainly does fly by. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me again this month. Wonderful. So yeah, there we go. 30 minutes sure does go quick. Now, you may have seen my wonderful colleagues were in the comments suggesting that you register for our festival, which is kicking off tomorrow. Please do register for free. You will have access to 3 whole days of amazing content. You certainly don't want to be missing out. In fact, several of our panelists are guests on the festival with in-depth interviews and panel discussions as well. So you certainly will want to hear much more from them. If you have only caught part of this and you want to watch it back, you can watch it back on LinkedIn, but it also will be up on demand on the Business of Data platform very soon. If you head over to the platform, you are able to subscribe for lots of amazing content, including reports, articles, and our podcast as well. But for now, we'll leave it there and we'll see you next time.